others.
I have.
But naturally, the Supreme Pontiff could not openly condone the spilling of blood. "It's good that the job can be done at last," said Francesco. "We've had enough setbacks. As it is, killing them in the cathedral will draw heavy criticism on us." "It is our last and only option," said Rodrigo with authority. "And as we are doing God's work in ridding Florence of such scum, the setting is appropriate. Besides, once we control the city, let the people murmur against us if they dare." "Still, they keep changing their plans," said Bernardo Baroncelli. "I'm even going to have someone call on his younger brother Giuliano to make sure he's up in time for High Mass." All the men laughed at that, except Jacopo and the Spaniard, who had noticed his sober expression. "What is it, Jacopo?" Rodrigo asked the older Pazzi. "Do you think they suspect something?" Before Jacopo could speak, his nephew waded in impatiently. "It's impossible. The Medici are too arrogant or too stupid even to notice." "Do not underestimate our enemies," Jacopo chided him. "Don't you see that it was Medici money that funded the campaign against us at San Gimignano?" "There will be no such problems this time," snarled his nephew, bridling at having been corrected in front of his peers, and with the memory of his son Vieri's death still green in his mind. In the silence that followed, Bernardo turned to Stefano di Bagnoni. "I'll need to borrow a set of your priestly robes for tomorrow morning, Padre. The more they think they're surrounded by clerics, the safer they'll feel." "Who will strike?" asked Rodrigo. "I," said Francesco. "And I," chimed in Stefano, Antonio, and Bernardo. "Good." Rodrigo paused. "I think on the whole daggers would be best, so much easier to conceal and very handy when close work is involved. But it's still good to have the Pope's armory as well. I don't doubt but there'll be a few loose ends to clear up once the Medici brothers are no more." He raised his hand and made the sign of the cross over his fellow conspirators. "Dominus vobiscum, gentlemen," he said, "and may the Father of Understanding guide us." He looked around. "Well, I think that concludes our business. You must forgive me if I take my leave of you now. There are several things I need to do before I return to Rome, and I must be on my way before dawn. It wouldn't do at all for me to be seen in Florence on the day the House of Medici crumbled to dust." Ezio waited, pressed against a wall in the shadows, until the 6 men had departed, leaving him in darkness. Only when he was quite sure that he was fully alone did he produce his own lamp and strike a tinder to its wick. He made his way back the way he had come. The fox was waiting in the shadowy Rucellai chapel. Ezio, with a full heart, told him what he had heard. "To murder Lorenzo and Giuliano de' Medici in the cathedral at High Mass tomorrow morning," said the fox when Ezio had finished, and Ezio could see that for once the man was almost at a loss for words. "It is sacrilege, and it is worse than that. If Florence should fall to the Pazzi, then God help us all." Ezio was lost in thought. "Can you get me a seat in the cathedral tomorrow?" he asked, "close to the altar, near the Medici?" The fox looked grave. "Hard, but perhaps not impossible." He looked at the young man. "I know what you're thinking, Ezio, but this is something you cannot possibly pull off alone." "I can try, and I have the element of surprise. And more than one stranger's face among the aristocrazia near the front might arouse the Pazzi's suspicions. But you must get me in there, Gilberto." "Call me the fox," Gilberto answered him, then grinning said, "Only foxes can match me for cunning." He paused. "Meet me in front of the Duomo half an hour before High Mass." He looked Ezio in the eye with new respect. "I will help if I can, Messer Ezio. Your father would have been proud of you."
9. Ezio arose before dawn the following day, Sunday, 26th April, and made his way to the cathedral. Very few people were about, though a handful of monks and nuns were making their way to perform the rite of lauds. Aware that he should avoid notice, he climbed arduously to the very top of the campanile and watched the sun rise over the city. Gradually, beneath him, the square began to fill with citizens of every description, families and couples, merchants and nobles, eager to attend the main service of the day, graced as it would be by the presence of the Duke and his younger brother and co-ruler. Ezio surveyed the people keenly, and when he saw the fox arrive on the cathedral steps, he made his way to the side of the tower least in view, and clambered down, agile as a monkey, to join him, remembering to keep his head low and to blend in as far as was possible with the crowd, using his fellow citizens as cover. He had put on his best clothes for the occasion, and wore no weapon openly, though many of his male fellow citizens of the wealthy merchant and banking class had ceremonial swords at their waistbands. He could not resist keeping an eye out for Christina, but he did not see her. "Here you are," said the fox, as Ezio joined him. "All the arrangements have been made, and a place reserved for you on the aisle in the 3rd row." As he spoke, the crowd on the steps parted, and a row of heralds raised trumpets to their lips and blew a fanfare. "They're coming," he added. Entering the church from the baptistry side, Lorenzo de' Medici appeared first, with his wife Clarice at his side. She held little Lucrezia, their oldest, by the hand, and 5-year-old Piero marched proudly on his father's right. Behind them, accompanied by her nurse, came 3-year-old Maddalena, while baby Leo, swaddled in white satin, was carried by his. They were followed by Giuliano and his heavily pregnant mistress, Fioretta. The mass of people in the square bowed low as they passed, to be met at the entrance to the Duomo by 2 of the attendant priests, whom Ezio recognized with a thrill of horror, Stefano da Bagnoni and the one from Volterra, whose full name, as the fox told him, was Antonio Maffei. The Medici family entered the cathedral, followed by the priests, and they were followed by the citizens of Florence in order of rank. The fox nudged Ezio and pointed. Among the throng he had spotted Francesco di Pazzi and his fellow conspirator Bernardo Baroncelli, disguised as a deacon. "Go now," he hissed urgently to Ezio. "Keep close to them." More and more people crowded into the cathedral until it could hold no more, so that those who had hoped for a place had to be content to remain outside. 10,000 people had gathered in all, and the fox had never seen such a great assembly in Florence in all his life. He prayed silently for Ezio's success. Inside, the crowd settled in the stifling heat. Ezio had not been able to get as close to Francesco and the others as he had wished,